This is the programme of the 63rd Ghent Wevelgem, the race which bridges the gap between the two World Cup races from Tour of Flanders to Paris-Roubaix. And this is the list of riders. Now we're at the hotel here, which by coincidence is the same hotel as Lamprey-Dakin. They had a great Tour of Flanders. They placed 2 riders in the first 8 over the line, with their new rider, Max Chandry, and with the old hand, Ludo Dierksens. Now Dierksens is a Belgian who wants to win Ghent Wevelgem. Now looking out the window, the weather is bad. It is very, very wet. It is very typically Belgium at this time of the year, and I think Dierksens could be the winner because he's a strong man. The course, a familiar one. It takes in 2 climbs of the Kemmelberg, but today I think a lot of skill will be required for the very slippery descent away from that mountain. Well, Paul Schoen left the hotel about an hour ago. He's down at the start line in Ghent, so let's check out the weather with him.
Well, thanks for that, Phil, and we're about 40 miles away from your very warm, luxurious hotel. But here there are still a few spots of rain, but it's certainly not as wet as it was at the hotel in Kortrijk this morning. For the moment, all of the riders are getting ready, and they're in fact getting themselves psyched up. Many of them still locked in their vans, getting prepared for what is going to be a very long and wet Ghent Wevelgem today.
And if you think it's easy, well, you try to get interviews if your name is Paul Schoen, and sometimes they think it's just the crowd tapping you on the back. Eric Zabel here not realising it's Paul. They're pretty good friends normally, and Zabel, they're not in the mode here to give us an interview at the start. Now, who'd want to be a journalist at the start of a major race? And this is a particularly difficult one to talk to people at.
Wilfred, it's typical Belgian weather again here for Ghent Wevelgem, and a lot of people are saying that it's a big occasion for Domo Fritz to try and get the win.
Yeah, a very important race today, and there's much of wind, and we know the street, and we're not winning Sunday, maybe we win today against Wevelgem.
Roman Weinsteins is looking in excellent form. Is the plan today to try and keep the race together for him?
Yeah, we're looking in the final when all is together. We take the sprint for him. But we have also Sunday for Paris-Roubaix. It's a very important race for the next week.
Well, Arvis Pizix, it's a brand new season, and it's also a brand new team for you, and you seem to be pretty comfortable.
Yeah, so far looks comfortable. The team is already the new sponsors, but the team is old. But yeah. So far I have done all. This is my how you say? This is my period when I have to make my best results, and I try to do what I can.
You must have been very impressed with yourself in the Tour of Flanders on Sunday, because after that difficulty on the Old Quaremont, you kept fighting back and stayed in contention.
It took a lot of me, and afterwards I didn't feel anymore so good. The last 25k was too long for me.
What about Ghent Wevelgem today? The team looking for the win?
I think all teams looking for the win who comes to the start.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Jeroen, this is the first time that you will come to the Ghent Wevelgem in the Lotto team, and the team is riding good at the moment. Does that mean that we'll see you pretty close to the front?
I hope so. This year I'm the worst in the team. Everybody's winning, and I didn't win until now. So I think it's gonna be time for me to win a few stages.
It's also maybe a little bit easier because some of the big names like Shamil may well be thinking about staying away from the race and thinking more about Paris-Roubaix, so it gives the big sprinters a chance.
Yeah, always, but you know it's always a hard race with a lot of wind. 2 times the camel, and you know they will ride. The front riders were riding for the victory.
Mario Cipollini says in the newspapers this morning that he's going to win. Does that mean nobody else should start?
Oh, but it's okay. When he says he's going to win, the team is riding for him, then they keep it everything good together, and then I will be sitting in his wheel.
Good luck.
Thank you.
George, a pretty sound performance last weekend in Tour of Flanders. What's your thoughts about today's race?
Yeah, I felt good on Sunday. It was unfortunate that we missed the final breakaway. Today is going to be a hard race. It's always hard. The weather's a little bit iffy today. Main thing is to stay out of trouble. Sunday is my big goal for the year. So I'd like to do a good race today, but my priority is Sunday.
So does that mean that you may well try and give a chance to one of the other riders like Christian van der Velde and take a back seat yourself?
Well, actually, Christian is not here. He's doing Tour de la Sarthe. So but we have Ekimov and Cedric Vasseur that are riding really well. So we'd like to have us up there in the first group today.
the form at the moment is excellent, and you're going to try and nurture that through until the Paris-Roubaix race on Sunday?
Definitely. Ideally, I'd like to get to Roubaix and be, even better than I was on Sunday. But I think if I have the same legs as Sunday, I'll be up there for Roubaix. Thank you.
So the atmosphere building at the start of the 63rd race from Ghent to Wevelgem.
Well, Joe, it's a bit strange to see you here at the start of Wevelgem, because I read in the Belgian papers this morning Cipollini's going to win. So why is anybody else coming?
Cipollini is going to win, but he's not starting when he is sick. I heard it. Yeah, it's true. He is sick. Then now we have a chance for winning when Cipollini is normally the fastest man in the peloton, and he is not on the depart, and it's good.
The Cofidis team, though, more seriously, has been very good this year since the start of the season. They've lost Frank van den Broek, but it seems as if all the other Belgians now are more liberated.
Yeah, we are riding not bad. Matan riding good. Matan wins the stage in Paris-Nice. He wins the Trois-Jours de Pan. Piercy is good in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. We are not bad, but for winning a big race, it's a little bit difficult. We are not the mentality van Frank van den Broek for winning a big race. But maybe today we have a little bit luck, and we can win a race from big category.
Yeah, but Joe Plankaart's always got a good sprint when the wind's in with a chance.
Yeah, it's true. This year it's difficult for when other years I won 3 or 4 stages, for beginning of the classic. But this year I'm not run race. Maybe I hope today I win Ghent Wevelgem, and it's starting of a big season then. Okay, man.
You must be pretty chuffed with your performance last weekend in the Tour of Flanders.
Yeah, we rode, as results don't show how good I think we rode as a team. We were in everything all day, and George has got great legs, but hopefully we can show today or Sunday, we can really get amongst it, because he's got the legs to win one of these races. He's just got a bit of luck and maybe show a little bit more aggression, I think.
Maybe on a race like today, Wevelgem, George will actually take a back seat and give guys like yourself a chance.
Yeah, I'm going to cover the brakes today, and you never know what happens. It's always going to be a lot of crosswind along the ocean, and a lot of guys do hold back for Sunday today, so maybe I might get a chance to have a ride today. We'll see what happens.
Big change for you. Is it good fun riding for an English-speaking team?
Yeah, it's a totally different world. Just little things like communication things. I don't have to think about what I say when I say it, but it's good. The guys are really good guys, and different goal with the Tour de France instead of the Tour of Italy this year.
Good luck. We'll be following you all year.
Thank you.
Can I just get 2 quick questions?
Yes, do it.
Ludo, a very strong performance by you last weekend in the Tour of Flanders, and really it seemed as if you were trying to blow the race apart.
Yes, I tried to, and I think it was a very good day for me, and but yeah, I wanted to win, but it didn't work out. So I was 8, but I'm happy for it. Yeah.
These races here in the north of France and Belgium are very important to you. What are your chances today in Ghent Wevelgem?
Today it's a different race than Sunday. For me, I think I have to try in the final, and it's more for the sprinters, I think, today. But you never know, and I hope to do a good final also today.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Well, Peter, a bad time to have a little bit of illness, but you did say that you must ride today, Ghent Wevelgem, to be competitive for Sunday.
Yeah, if you don't ride today, I think for Sunday is finished, and then also for the other races, you need. I didn't race didn't so much 14 days now, so I need some kilometers and some good kilometers.
It's difficult to find good kilometers in these weather conditions here in Belgium, because it's been very cold and very wet all week.
Yeah, that's Belgium. That's here the races, and we have to do it. So
sometimes.
What do you think about looking at the pictures in the newspapers of Paris-Roubaix for the weekend? Because the roads look pretty bad.
I heard I train every day, so it will be really shit. We will see Sunday. Normally they give better weather for the second 2 days who are coming, but there's so much water there, so we will see.
Good luck.
Only one question.
Well, Rob, it's almost a baptism of fire. This is your first year with the professionals, and you started off with the Tour of Flanders.
That's right, yeah. I mean, I rode Leeds Classic in '96 with Ambrosia, but I only did an hour and a half, so that doesn't really count. But yeah, no, it was an unbelievable race. I mean, I thought the Paris-Roubaix was this coming Sunday, not last week, and it was so much pavé. But yeah, no, it was great.
A lot of responsibility being on a team that at the moment is riding very well, with riders like Martin and Farazijn really super motivated.
That's right, but I mean, I prefer that. I was talking to the guys yesterday and was saying that I actually prefer to lay myself down for them and work for them, so it gives me a job to do and it keeps me busy during the race, because otherwise for 5-6 hours I'll be sat there chewing my nails. But yeah, no, I love it. It's good.
It also, doing that over the first couple of years of a career, it also helps you to learn the role that you might have to play later on.
Most definitely, yeah. Yeah, you know, it's a big learning curve. I've been riding the bike now for 16 years, and it's just been a constant curve, and it's still going up. It's great. Cheers.
Well, Gerrit van Bont, winner from last year, this year riding for an American team, things must be slightly different.
Well, it's not different, I think, because a race is a race, and what team you're on, I think it's the same. So I think it's not so much different what team you're racing. It's just the races are the same, so it's okay.
Is it a slightly different experience? Maybe the team is a little bit more relaxed than a European squad.
Well, we had I raced 3 years in a Holland team with TVM, and I think it's almost the same atmosphere there, so a little bit relaxing. But yeah, I think it's the American mentality is slightly different than the European. Everything is more, yeah, like you say, relaxing, and the pressure is there also because we need to have prestations for the Tour de France. So the pressure is it, but the team and yeah, everything around is more relaxing.
Nico Martin, a little bit unlucky last weekend in the Tour of Flanders with the 2 punctures and the crash.
I did the super race just before the Ekenberg. I had a puncture just before, and then I came back. On the top, I turned right. I had a crash with another wheel. So then I restart, and then I had a flat puncture behind. So I was not lucky at all. The whole team, we were not so lucky, but I hope today.
But Nico Martin, you finished second in Ghent Wevelgem before, and since the Tour de France last year, when you wore the King of the Mountains jersey and the departure of your good friend Frank van den Broeke, it seems as if you're assuming now the role of a leader.
I'm not a real leader, but now I'm 30 years this year, so I'm maybe on the maximum of my force. I'm 30 years, so all the good classic riders, they all 29, 30, 31. So. It's maybe it's maybe lucky because Frank is gone now, so now I can do my chance, I can do my job. Otherwise, when Frank he was in the team, I do all the work for him. So now I'm easy, and now I have 2 riders who cares about me. So now it's a better situation for me.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And as the riders now make their way towards the start, literally around the corner in the centre of the city of Ghent, hats off to Paul Sherwin there. Had a very busy morning and he did pretty well, speaking to many of the riders in the race. And as usual, all of them able to speak the English language in some way or other. Gentle rollout and a big cheer there for Johan Museu. Sits at the back of the pack, but it's all changed now. We join the action out on the coast now, Paul. This is the area, the weather just 10 degrees. It's very chill, it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit. But the race has been very fast all day. And the bad news is Gerrit van Bont has gone out with a leg injury.
Very bad news for him and for Team Mercury as well. Not had a great start to the classic season. We were hoping to see Peter van Petegem being competitive, but he too has been under the weather coming into the classic period. A lot of riders from US Postal at the front here. This is Maddie White, the new signing from Australia on the front here, keeping the pace high. The reason they're doing this right now, Phil, is we're coming down into Dranouter and we're really approaching the area of the climbs for the first time. The group, as you can see, has literally been split to pieces on the road down from Ostend. It was very windy up by the coast, and many of these riders have been left in groups trying to stay in contact with the race.
Like many of the Belgian classics, you get a flat start, but then you do get the crosswinds and the rough roads. Then you come down to the area where the small climbs are, and that's what's happening now in Ghent Wevelgem. Once into the circuit, we do 2 laps of the Kemmelberg, then we peel off and direct our attention to the finish in Wevelgem.
Well, the next climb will be the climb of Monteberge, which is the small climb just before they go over the Kemmelberg for the first time. A very difficult approach here because it actually sorts out a lot of the riders with the first ascent of Monteberge. You can see George Hincapie in about 10th position, trying to ride very close to the front right now, and the main field, Phil, being very much controlled by the Rabobank team of Holland.
Well, the Dutch riders love this sort of road. This is their type of racing, even though we're over the border in Belgium. Rabobank excel at this sort of riding just now. They're driving the pace, and Museo is still in the thick of it. So too, and here come the Domo boys. They really want a result right now.
A lot of riders moving forward here. They realise that the first ascent of the Mont Camel is going to be a very difficult one. 1 or 2 riders really getting left behind. This is Monteberge. It's only 800 meters in length with an average grade of 9% and a height of 51 meters. Not a steep climb, but it's the repetitive natures of these climbs in Belgium that make them very difficult.
And we're looking at about 68 kilometres left to ride of the 214 for the day. This much shorter than the major World Cup classics, and it slots nicely in between Paris-Roubaix to follow and Tour de Flanders just gone. Tempo always high now. It's always for the strong men to get to the front. Leon Van Bon of the Mercury Viatel team off to the left of our picture there. Rabobank, and the notable name here is Sven Nys. He's a cyclo-cross rider and a great exponent at it too, and he's now showing us he can handle the roadmen as well here.
Jeroen Blijlevens from Lotte on the right-hand side sounded very confident at the start this morning. There's a major group of around about 1.5 minutes behind, but I feel the way these guys are hitting these mountains now, Phil, they are basically out of Ghent Wevelgem for today. Most of the major favourites in here, and you can see out of the saddle in the middle of the group there, about 3rd line back, the big blue and red helmet of Georgie Hincapie, looking very good, I feel, during these classic weeks.
Another occasion, actually, Paul, when George has come to this early season part of the world. Totally inspired. He really does rise to this occasion. This is George's period of time when he is the outright leader of the US Postal Service team. Somebody's gone. Looks like a Rabobank rider who slipped away, and I think it was Sven Nys. No, it wasn't. In fact, this is Chris Pears who's gone clear, I think, and that is Nys who's gone after him. So I thought I saw a Rabobank boy.
Well, great to see Sven Nys, a very good, successful cyclo-cross rider in the winter months, coming here now and being given the chance to ride on the road. No reaction there. There won't be much reaction coming from the Rabobank team either, Phil. They will try and keep a block across the front of the road and give Nys a bit of a chance to go into the Mont Kemmel in the early front positions.
Big gear they're turning here as they roll gently towards the Kemmel. The Kemmel is a sharp left-hand turn, then it goes straight up towards the sky and it's cobbled. And the crowd are, as always, in their thousands. They're waiting for the spectacle, and the thing about this particular event is they come round and do it all again. Then you can go in the little cafe on the top and watch television and see who wins the race down in Wevelgem.
I always find one of the scariest parts of the Kemmelberg climb actually is the descent off the summit. It plunges down. It's a straight line, all cobblestones. I remember one occasion I came off the top of that climb there and I had 2 blowouts at the same time. And for some unbelievable reason, I was able to keep the bike upright, but fell in the ditch at the bottom.
Well, Paul was lucky because a couple of years ago, the riders came over the top and 5 or 6 landed on the heads and were unconscious for a while. It was a very nasty prang. Anyway, these 2 riders not thinking of crashing right now. They're thinking of breaking away as we come around to 68 kilometres to go. Sven Nys and Chris Pears. Pears is a man who's always up near the sharp end, and one day he's going to land a good result, that man, riding for Cofidis. And this is the workout coming from the main field. They're absolutely flying. This is the scrabble to get to the turn first, and it is just absolutely really difficult at the front to hold your position now.
Total chaos, an absolute disaster if you're in the first 15 places, because you'll slip back very rapidly on the early slopes of the Kemmelberg. You can see it's almost like a bunch sprint for the last 500 meters to turn into that corner, because very often, especially as it is today, there's a bit of dampness in the air. The cobblestones are quite slippery, and you'll find somebody will fall off and that can cause a big gap in the main field. These two riders, though, seem to have survived. Looking over their shoulder, they know they've got about 10 or 15 seconds advantage, and they are now just approaching the left-hand turn. 20% at its steepest part. It's only a 500-meter climb with an average of 10.2%, but you can see now these guys are straight onto it, and Sven Nys using his cyclocross experience to just ride over these cobblestones.
This man has been Belgium's hope for a world title for a few years now. He's always had bad luck when it comes round to the big one, but he's a medalist at that level. This is the chaos further down the slopes as riders get their feet down. These days the crowds are barriered and kept back. In the old days they were all over the Kemmel there trying to find the riders to push them up the hill. This is a very hard climb, this 1 in 5 in old parlance. As we look now at the two leaders as they've got onto the climb first, just now is the steepest section of the climb, that 20% gradient. And coming up behind, a whole pack driving very, very hard now. Crédit Agricole really driving well at the front.
A lot of riders here moving to the front of the pack. There's none of the big names. There's Leon van Bon, the champion of Holland, on the far side. There is Ronan Weinsteins, the world champion. And a lot of the big names a little bit further back down this group at the moment. I didn't see Johan Museeuw, but I'm sure he's very close to the front. He would be looking to try and put in a performance on a ride like today. Jens Voigt going through there for the Crédit Agricole team as well. But Sven Nys and Chris Peers just surviving the onslaught and return of the main field behind.
And it looks like Thor Hushvod who's coming up there for Crédit Agricole. As Chris Peers tries to keep the pressure on at the front, it looks like they've caught Sven Nys as George Hincapie goes shooting through there. A man who loves this climb and is staying right up at the front. Once over the top, there's a little bit of a flat, and then you plunge down the cobblestones. Then you make a loop and come round and do it all again. And the field, having come up this time, pretty well compact.
It's a large group, but there is a much larger group down the road, and the last time check we got on that second group on the road is over 2 minutes behind. There's Joe Plankart slipping through right now. Piotr Wadecki, the champion of Poland, and this is the tail enders of the group, and you can see just how difficult the top part of this climb is. This is the part of the climb where it kicks up to 20% in gradient, and a bit further down, Mercury Viatel. This is over the top now, right by the cenotaph, and very shortly they will take a right-hand turn and plunge down, and Hincapie leading the charge.
George has got himself a wonderful position there as he comes down the big descent. Listen to the rattles and bangs as the next group come down. Leon van Bon, champion of the Netherlands, is in there on his new team now, Mercury Viatel, looking and hoping for a wild card place in the Tour de France. They've certainly got the team to do that. Little bit of daylight here now as the back markers will use this descent to get back on. This is really a death-defying drop here. The riders got all of their hands ready for the clash of metal. They're on the brakes there just in case somebody falls in front of them. They'll run straight off the cobblestones and can keep the momentum going as they'll make a left-handed circuit now back around to the Zwartenberg and the Rodeberg.
The big problem about this descent, Phil, is it is actually so scary and so bumpy that you're going down full bore. Because it's cold, your eyes are watering, and what also is happening is your eyeballs are actually bobbing up and down in the sockets, and you can hardly see where you're going. This is the second group on the road, more than 2 minutes behind, and for these guys it's really just a question of riding to the finish and trying to keep as warm as possible.
Well, if they have been detached at this stage, the chances are they won't go left, they'll go right and just ride down to Wevelgem, call it a day, and then try and do something a little later on.
I thought for one moment there that was Michele Bartoli there from the Mapei squad, but it's not. It's actually the young rider who is champion of Hungary who was in the leading group there.
The crowd still enjoying riders coming over the top of the Kemmelberg. 64 kilometres left still to ride. The leaders are much closer than that. And George Hincapie, expecting a decisive move right at the top, may have made it well there. We've got Gabriele Balducci is in here too now. He's for the Vini Calderola team, or Taconi Sport this year. And this is a nice little group here. There's other riders up here. Hushhoft, we saw on the move for Crédit Agricole's made it. Nico Matan has made it. Another Nico Ikut, has got in there as well. I think Van Bon, yes, there he is. He's in there. Pizix is there. I think all the men Paul interviewed have joined the breakaway today.
Well, I must have inspired him, that's all I can say. I did also catch a sign there of Daniele Nardello, another man coming across here trying to make the junction, realizing that this is a pretty serious group at the front of the main field. It's one of the riders from Faso Bortolo trying to get across the gap there.
Well, we'll see who that is when we catch up with the pictures, but right now it looks as though George Hincapie's got a very strong group here. He's got the world champion in there as well, Weinsteins, and I think I saw Eric Zabel make the split.
I think that Faso Bortolo rider was Alessandro Petacchi. It looked as if he was just about to make junction with the rear end of that group. Kemmeldorp is the small town just on the summit, on the descent, I should say, of the Kemmelberg. They will now go out and do a fairly large loop out into the countryside before heading back up to the Kemmel for their second ascent.
Well, this is Zabel, number 61, tagged onto the back, so he's reading it very well. Winner of Milan San Remo this year. Number 72 in there is Conte. So this is a nice little group of 5 men trying to get away, but they're about to be joined. So this is an unusual Ghent Wevelgem in some ways, because normally we see a big group, but we've got a group here of less than 20 men.
Stefan Weserman is in this group as well, a man that Telecom have put forward as a man to look after when they come to these classics. Certainly he was very good last weekend in the Tour of Flanders, and I expect to see him riding pretty close to the front next week when we go to Paris-Roubaix. But it's good to see that Hincapie has chosen the right move here. Hincapie looking quite marvellous in Tour of Flanders, getting caught out really with the little bit of argy-bargy between the big names of the Tour of Flanders. But I have to say that George was one of the strongest bike riders in that classic. Coming to the classics, Phil, this year with much better condition and not having to contend with that broken rib that he had last year with a crash he incurred during the 3 days of La Panna.
Signs of the gap beginning to open. 28 seconds. There are 14 riders here, and a quick calculation indicates 12 different teams represented. Telecom have got 2 men in Stefan Westerman and Erik Zabel, and that's rather good news because they're the 2 strong men of that particular squad. And just looking down the list here, Hincapie is the star as far as we're concerned. He's made the split. Cofidis have also got a couple of riders up here, Metan and Chris Piers.
There's a second group on the road. You can just see them there, Phil. There are 10 riders in that group. 25 seconds is the gap to that group. So it looks as if once again after the ascent of the Kemmelberg it will all come back together and we'll have a much larger group. There is also a third group on the road at around about 40 seconds.
Well, Sven Nys had his chance. He's in that second chasing group at the moment. He slipped back rather dramatically after he started on the climb of the Kemmel. There's the rider Johan Museo. A lot of hopes pinned on him. It'll be interesting to see just what Johan has planned for us today, because we're still suspect. We're not sure how he has come out of the winter after his rather nasty motorcycle accident. Although he looks very competitive, he may not be race sharp.
It's amazing, the story of Johan Museo, almost losing his life with that accident he had in Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago, coming back to take the victory in that event, almost to the top of his form. And then last year at the end of the season he went out on his motorbike and had a dramatic crash, again smashing his leg and forcing himself to come back. It's amazing the toughness of Johan Museo. And talking to him during the winter months, he actually said that while he was training to come back, the weather in the north of Belgium was so bad he would actually sit on his home trainer at home and train for 3 and 4 hours at a time.
Well, we're coming round to within 5 kilometres now of the Zwarteberg. The climb will start before that because that mileage will be at the top. 50-kilometre point, and the gap is stretching now. 64 seconds is the gap. 14 men, a little bit of regrouping behind. Quick rundown of the names for you. George Hincapie, Postal, Veensteins, Domo, Zabel, Westerman, Telecom, Conte, Seiko, Piers and Matan Cofidis, Pizix from the new CSC World Online team, Pataki for Fassa Bortolo, Van Bon from the Mercury Vietel, Nardello, Mappe, Balducci, Vini Calderola, and Ekut Lotto and Hushoft from Credit Agricole.
This is a very good group right now, and Johan Museo being caught in the group behind for the moment, so he won't work too much because they've got the man they want in this leading group, Phil, and he's right there. He's the current world champion. That is the man who they expect to come out with the victory, especially from a small group like this, and their man Weinsteins will be happy to look down the road and know that he's got a man like Johan Museo playing policeman in the second group on the road.
One rider we're seeing in a big serious breakaway here for the first time is the Norwegian Thor Hushoft, Paul. He's just come off a tremendously successful Tour of Normandy, which is not one of the world's major races, but even so, riders who do well in that tend to do well later. He won the Tour of Normandy, he won the prologue, stage 1 and stage 4, so it was a great result for Credit Agricole, and he's only 23 years of age, and he comes from good stock because he's done some excellent rides in the World Championships under 23, so he's coming now as a real hot pro, turned pro for the first time last year, and even then managed to pick up 5 victories, so he's a real talent.
He certainly was. One of the most magnificent victories he put in last year was the first stage of the Tour de Loire when he blasted out of the main field and showed everybody a very clean set of wheels. There is the third group on the road, and it seems as if a lot of impetus has gone out of that group on the right-hand side. You can see the top sprinter there, and that is Jeroen Blijlevens. And in this group, a lot of the teams here, Phil, have got men represented further up the road, so they're not really too keen to chase right now. But what might happen is the second group on the road, which is around about 10 riders strong, may well join that front group, and we'll have a 20-man leading group.
Yes, and that's an interesting move. You see, with 12 teams represented, who is going to start the chase here? Because we've got some big names. Veensteins, the on-form world champion. Hincapie, the best of the US Postal. And the two top telecom riders. That's three big teams not going to chase now. And Hushoft, I would say, is the best of the Credit Agricole boys too. And I caught sight there of Jens Voigt sitting at the front of the chase and doing nothing at all. But the gap is still only 63 seconds as we move on at 53 kilometers to go. We're just about a mile now from the top of the Zwartenberg. Not a huge climb, and it's a good surfaced road, but it does provide a stepping stone to the Roderberg, the Red Mountain, and then onto the Kemmel itself.
Well, this group here certainly don't have a lot of impetus in it, and there will be a lot of driving in the second group on the road, trying to force themselves up to that leading group of 10. And as you can see, a lot of riders from Cofidis, Seiko, Telecom and Domo Farm Frites in this group, they certainly are not going to the front, because as far as they're concerned, they've got the right men in that leading group, and they will be happy with the combination of the group at the front at the moment.
Yes, and by the way, Cipollini, despite the fact he was supposed to lead the Seiko team, didn't bother to start this morning after all of that, so the riders won't be looking for him. He's certainly not around now. He'll be watching this on television. Still 104 at the 52 to go kilometers, 214 total. Good combination this. There'll be a few riders at the back kicking themselves, because this could be the perfect move. The Roderberg leads on to the Monteberg and then onto the Kemmel itself.
This is a very tough part of Belgium to race, and you can see a lot of these roads, Phil, are very much open and windswept, especially as they are today. A lot of wind coming across on these narrow roads, which causes the race to split up quite dramatically. The riders at the front of the pack now are all working very sensibly. They realize that the most important thing is to try and build up an advantage by the time they get to the Kemmelberg next time. Good to see Arvis Piziks, the Latvian champion, riding so well. He had a very good Tour of Flanders just a couple of days ago, and I do have a feeling that we may well see a return to the top for him, as he performed exceptionally just a couple of days ago. Erik Zabel must be feeling quite happy to be in a group like this, because he's the fastest sprinter in here, and he's got an excellent man to lead him out when it comes down to the sprint at the end in Stefan Wevelgem. And it may well be that Wevelgem will have to play somewhat of a domestic role today, and that role will be reversed when we go through to Paris-Roubaix, because I think Stefan Wevelgem is a man that Team Telecom want to take into Paris-Roubaix in the ideal condition.
Time going up, 1:32 at 51 kilometers, so the elastic is stretching. Not quite taut just yet, but you've got riders now out of the race, like last year's winner, Geert van Bont. The unlucky race results his last few races, in the big races, unfortunately, for Mercury Viertel, when they've been in the thick of the action and through no fault of their own, they've lost their men, and that's really a shame. Here we are. There's a little bit of a breakdown the Zwartenberg for you. It's a 1 in 10 climb, just over half a kilometer. As you can see, we hardly ripple above sea level. These are short and sharp, and then it's over the other side and away again.
Well, these guys have increased their advantage over the second group on the road to 1.5 minutes right now. It's Petacchi on the front in the white jersey of Faso Bortolo, a very good bike rider. Taking over from him is Balducci from their new team, the Tacconi Vinny Calderillo. And Hincapie riding sensibly there in third position, not using too much effort, but making sure that if there is going to be a split on one of these climbs, Phil, he wants to be in the front half of the split. And shadowing him, the champion of Holland, a very good signing for the new American team over here in Europe, Mercury Viertel.
Well, these two know each other extremely well, Leon and George, because they've raced on the American circuit together as well, always on rival teams. Leon van Bon really cut his teeth on the old Tour du Pont with a couple of stage wins in different years in that. Very popular with the American public, and he saw George also come through from his amateur days as a member of the American International Amateur Team to what is now a really good pro bike rider.
I always remember George's first appearance on the international circuit, racing for the United States amateur team at 19 years of age. He showed all of the pros a clean lick at the line when he went down the hill into the finish in the Homestead. Quite a remarkable sprint. It was a dangerous sprint because it was downhill at around about 70 kilometers an hour, and he actually made his way through the group, somewhat illicitly moving his hands off the handlebars, and the referees decided to disqualify him. And at 19 years of age, he had a big tearsome crossing of the line there, was disqualified. But since then, he's turned into a really tough one-day rider.
A hard man indeed, originating from Colombia in South America. And as you can see, the riders now all bunching together and looking really good. And this Jerome Blijlevens in the centre of our picture there. This is the group on the road now, getting bigger by the minute as other riders come up. And nobody is making any attempt to catch the leaders. Reason being, they've all got mates up front. This race is done for the rest. We're looking at 14 men now to decide this race. Inside 50 to go. And next stop will be over the Monteberg onto the Kemmel.
This is Piotr Wadecki on the front in the white jersey, champion of Poland. He's got a chance now to move across to a very big top team. The Domo Farm Frieds team used to ride for Moroz, and we saw him racing in many places around the world. As we go back to the leading group, as they try and split the group heading over the summit of the Monteberg. This is now the final slopes of the Rodeberg, the Red Mountain. And you and I have been here several times to start bike rides in this part of the Heuvelland, a very beautiful part of Belgium when the sun comes out anyway, to go for training rides.
Yes, indeed. And the weather again has come good, but it's been a terrible week here in Belgium. We've been enjoying ourselves with a small group of American cyclists, I must say, but the weather has not been kind. I'll be happy it's dry today, although it's a bit chilly. There's Tor Hushovd, just gone off to our picture to the right in the green jersey, riding on the wheel of Arvis Piziks, champion of Latvia. The world champion coming down in his white jersey there. And we've got the Dutch champion in this breakaway. So this is a very select group. And they've left behind everybody today, and they're not coming back. We are pushing this out now to nearly 2 minutes.
This is a serious group, and we've got some serious names in here as well. Wevelgem is the man in pink, just taking up second from last position right now. Biagio Conti is the rider from Seiko. Some pretty good sprinters here as well, Phil. So if it does come down to a 14-man sprint at the end, we're going to be treated to a real humdinger of a finale.
Well, there's the team that have really missed out today and must be kicking themselves, because they were there at one point. This is Matthew Heyman, who's had a good win this year as he continues as a young pro. And Matt Heyman there for Rabobank have got nobody in that breakaway. And there'll be a really big row, I would think, at the finish from their team management, because they shouldn't have made a mistake like that.
Well, they had all the men at the front the first ascent of the Kemmelberg. Even their cyclo-crossman Sven Nys was in an ideal position. But really then they shouldn't have taken the defensive role of trying to give him the advantage going there. They should have paid more attention to riding near the front of the pack. Lampre Dakin moving up to the front of the main field too, and they too seem to be a team that have missed out a little bit from that leading group of riders.
Yep, no man for them either, and they're staying in our hotel, so I hope there's no rows going on when we get back there, because we'll have a sleepless night. But even so, they're thinking, I would think, of the big race coming up Sunday, Paris-Roubaix. This is, for many of them, a little loosener on the Wednesday, as it bridges now between the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. But for some riders, this is the main objective, and they feel they have a better chance at winning this than they will the big one at the weekend. But this group now is sailing out of it. 1:53, 48 kilometres left.
Well, this group, I reckon, is completely washed away for the moment, because in the front, all of those 14 riders seem to be sharing the pacemaking. We'll get a good idea of who's the strongmen next time we get up to the Kemmelberg. They're sending all of the team cars forward now, so obviously the race referees think that the race has stabilized somewhat going into the last section of the climbs, and they're sending all of the team cars forward to this group here, led through at the moment by the champion of Holland, Leon van Bon. Daniele Nardello is a man that we see an awful lot of, the Mappé rider there in the dark blue strip. He's a man who's always aggressive and nearly always very much to the front in the one-day classics, yet still has the ability to be fairly competitive going through to races like the Tour de France later on in the season.
Yeah, it's a very, very solid breakaway. Now it's virtually 2 minutes, 1:59, the clock moving on at 48k to go. And once we're up the Kemmel this time, those that hang on to the tails of the flyers on the climb in this breakaway can expect to go down towards the finish together. The hills will be over then, but the wind tends to become another factor as we run into the finish at Wevelgem. This race has been one of the most famous Belgian classics for years. First started, by the way, back in 1934, and the Belgian riders have tended to dominate the results.
Well, two teams are in a very good tactical superiority here right now. Team Telecom having two men in the group with Wevelgem and Eric Zabel, but also the two Cofidis Belgians who've managed to slip into the group here as well, Chris Beers and Nico Martin. Martin actually finishing second a few years ago in Ghent Wevelgem when he got away in a breakaway with his then leader Frank van den Broeke. Van den Broeke no longer on the Cofidis squad, and it seems as if those Belgian riders on Cofidis have been somewhat liberated now to ride their own races, and Matin is developing into a pretty serious team leader.
Yes, he is. He's having a good season too. He's a man, a very solid man. He had the problem with his heart, which almost ruined his career, but he seems to have got over that problem, and he's coming back to some good form. We're over 2 minutes now. Look at this, 47 kilometres, and this is heading out now to the turn as we go up towards Mont Kemmel again, over the top, down into the Kemmel village, and then out this time we'll head to Wevelgem.
Well, they drop down here just a little bit, not too much, and at the bottom of this descent they will find themselves at the foot of the Monteberg. That big black mountain right in front is the Kemmelberg, the forested mountain, which in the 1914-18 war was totally devoid of trees, and the scenes of some pretty serious battles between the French and the Germans.
And if you go back to the original history of the Kemmel, well, it was underwater, and as the land dried out, the Kemmel was formed, and now it stands out high above Flanders, a popular historical landmark for all to see, and of course for all of us who have ridden bikes. I actually raced over the Kemmelberg, I hate to think about it now, more than 30 years ago. I'm sure the cobbles were harder then, Paul.
Oh, a lot tougher in your day, Phil. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Thank you. What a star you are. You can stay forever.
Thank you very much. I tell you, one man who is a bit of a star is the man in the green shorts there, Hushvoort, very strong bike rider, and proving today that he's actually moved up an echelon. The Tour of Normandy that he won was in fact a race that was very much an amateur race until recent years, but now a lot of the pro teams tend to send their riders across to these formerly open or lesser amateur events to use them as preparation to go forward to races like this, the Ghent-Wevelgem race. We're on the slopes now of the Monteberg, and you can see the determination. This is Nico Matin on the front. He wants to try and split the group if he can. He nearly needs to just hold back a little bit, I would say, and put the majority of the effort on the next climb, which is in about 3 kilometers time, and that is the Kemmelberg for the last time.
Well, he above all knows this course very well. A Northern France rider, not too far away from where we are right now. That's Stefan Wesserman, who's the rider on the right. And now it's Matin's teammate comes through, Chris Piers. And they're working well now. The echelon's forming a little bit, but this is more or less big effort being thrown in by the strong men to try and reduce this group to fewer than the 14. There's Hushod on the back in the Crédit Agricole. These hills, Paul, they're not exactly steep, but they hit them so quickly.
I tell you what, they do hurt as well. You can see Hushvoort struggling a bit to stay on the back end. One man riding a bit too far to the rear of the group there in the blue strip of US Postal Service is Georgi Hincapie. Although George is a fairly good sprinter, he knows that he'd be able to accelerate as we get closer to the foot of the Kemmelberg and move himself into the first 3 or 4 places.
I saw the hand go up then, just for a moment, and that was Chris Piers. I think he's got a problem, and he's hoping somebody comes and speaks to him, but he's at the back. There's Georgi Hincapie on the right, and the Seiko rider there is Conte. He's just moved over to the right of the picture. A lot of effort being put up there by Balducci. Nice to see him doing a bit of work, and then comes Stefan Wesserman, and that might even be Zabel just there, actually.
Zabel is riding very much to the front. I would think a lot of riders in this group feel perturbed about the presence of Eric Zabel in this group, because he's had a fantastic season so far. He's a brilliant bike rider, man that you've got to really respect for the amount of work that he puts in during the winter months. He starts training around about the end of October, and by the time he got this year to the start of Milan-San Remo, he had almost 20,000 kilometers of training in his legs. He's a tough bike rider. I don't know how he manages to put all of that mileage in and still be competitive when he comes through to the month of July and defend his green jersey competition, which it seems now very much to have made his own.
Yes, it's got to be a case of being of mental satisfaction, because he loves his cycling. I was with him for 3 weeks in South Africa, not with him, but in the same restaurant, same hotel with him, watching him train, and he was piling in the kilometers, many more than his teammate Jan Ulrich and the rest of the team. It was always they'd go out together, and you'd wait an hour and a half, and you'd see Zabel come in when the others have been home for that hour and a half.
Tough man. He comes from a very tough East German upbringing, but he loves the sport, Phil. He loves his training, he loves his performances. Interesting to see a couple of months ago in the Cycle Sport magazine the collection of bicycles that Eric Zabel has managed to muster together, because he's collected all of those bicycles that he's put in some of his top performances in, and it's almost like a miniature cycling museum that he's gathered together, and he's got enough cycling paraphernalia from his own performances to make a pretty interesting place to visit.
Meanwhile, back to the workers from Rabobank, kicking themselves. They never put a man in that breakaway. Now it's all falling to these two riders to try and keep the race at least in touch, but it's slipping away. Just going that fraction slower than the breakaway. With some 28 miles to ride, it's 2 minutes and 15 seconds. They are not going to get back. They're probably hoping for a change of spirit on the climb of the Kemmel. If they don't make any progress after that, I should imagine they'll throw the towel in.
Well, Jeroen Blijlem's a very much changed rider. He's now on the Lotto squad after his change during the winter months, riding to the front of the group, but he won't want to chase at all there because Lotto have got Nico Eickhout as the leading group move now into the Kemmelberg for the last time. Hincapie, Phil, still very much close to the back.
Now let's see if anybody goes off the back here. It's Alessandro Patacchi who's in the hot seat just there, and it's Leon Van Bon of the Mercury Viatel team who is piling on the pressure at the front and really hitting this at a run. But what you've got to remember is when you get round a corner, this race just continues uphill for a little bit longer. If you've misjudged your entry speed, you will slow down.
Well, Van Bon is absolutely hammering right now, and certainly, yes, it does kick up a lot towards the summit of this climb and becomes very difficult. But what Van Bon is trying to do there is put other riders into difficulty. He wants to split the group. Hincapie moving through there. We just get a big sign of this large carcass of George Hincapie reacting to that move. Stefan Weserman, the first to respond in the pink there in second position. But Hincapie has come from almost last place in this group to third on the road and looks very comfortable over these cobbles.
Oh, George looks really good there. So does Pizzics. Remember his problems he had in the Tour of Flanders on the Quadamont. He's riding very well, looking very cool and collected. They're all concentrating on their own effort here, just staying in proximity of the wheel in front, get over the top and then settling up through the gears again. Charge down. A little bit of a split here being formed at the front with Stefan Weserman setting the trend and George Hincapie there alongside Leon Van Bon. A bit of a gap, but isn't George being vigilant today?
Well, he's riding sensibly, Phil. He's actually covering the moves rather than trying to instigate them. A serious move going off the front here right now. Daniele Nardello has seen that. Weinstein's the world champion going through, trying to respond. But look at that. On the back of the group, Eric Zabel is still there, very happy to sit on the tail of this group because he knows if they don't split up this group on the run into the finish, he's got to be the #1 favourite.
Well, as they start to go down, this is the flat concrete strip before they plunge on the cobbles again. Interestingly, I don't think anybody got dropped there. I think we still have 14 men.
All men are still in that group. It was a fairly sensible tempo, just a bit of an acceleration towards the summit by Weserman, but it appears now as if Georgie Hincapie has taken over responsibility at the front, but I would expect them to slow down and wait for the group to come back in. There are the three leaders, chased there by Daniele Nardello, but that is quite a big gap. It's already about 15 seconds.
So Hincapie has stretched them away. Weserman, Van Bon, Nardello. Looks like it might be Weinstein. Did you know Pataki who's bringing them through here? So he's got himself in the good seat. And tagged right on the back there was Chris Piers and his teammate Nico Matan. So we've got three riders trying to push the odds here, and this could be the next move.
Well, there's a long way to go to the finish with 13 riders chasing. This is the second group on the road. Right in the middle there is a former winner of this bike race, Lars Mikkelsen, but everybody else really just riding a fairly sensible tempo on the far side. Again, Vardecki always present at the front of the group. There is Gianluca Bortolami, the recent winner of the Tour of Flanders. Got his knee strapped up rather dramatically there, obviously overusing the gears in the recent Tour of Flanders that he won. There's Yatislav Ekimov, the Olympic gold medalist for the individual time trial. And the rest of these guys basically, Phil, I think just hoping to survive over the top of this climb because the leading group is more than 2 minutes ahead.
Awful lot of orange sleeve Rabobank riders there and not in the group, and they've not crossed the gap. Here he comes, Gianluca Bortolami. He won the classic Tour of Flanders. He's now inspired despite his leg strapping there. It looks as though he's got a troubled inside knee ligament as he comes up the hill. He's rode away from the field. And this could be Stefano Zanini setting the pace up the hill here. The two Mappe riders doing pretty well. But again, Rabobank not getting a man across. Bjoyter Radecki going through on the right. Servais Canavan. These are the riders who've missed the move today. They'll decide once over the top if they're going to bother to carry on. The last check we got was 2 minutes and 8 seconds.
You can see the panic here on the faces of these guys just trying to stay in contact with the rider in front of them. But they will then have to plunge off the top. There's Stewie O'Grady there at the back of the group, not having a very successful classic season so far. And Matty White, the new signing for US Postal. And this young man will just have to suffer the encouragements of the crowd and hope that he can integrate the group on the descent. Bortolami trying to ride across a 2-minute gap. Not a very sensible tactic at the moment, especially on these Belgian roads.
Yes, and this is where you can see quite clearly he is not happy on the way down. Hands always hovering on the brake levers, as they all are indeed, because the camera doesn't do this justice. This is a very nerve-wracking descent, believe me. There's Yekimov going through.
Quick glimpse there of Servais Carnarvon, the Domo Farm Freaks rider. He'll be pretty happy because the situation they have is they have the world champion in the breakaway. Museo just going through there as well. But as you see, Phil, yeah, definitely an awful lot of Rabobank riders in the group.
Still Jens Voigt, Matt White. Continue down, right, back to the sharp end. Now let's have a look. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It looks as though we're all coming 12. So we've still got 3 riders just up the road, possibly. Or are we all back together? No, I think we're all back together. 14 men have regrouped here. Just over 2 minutes the gap. And they're now racing, this time away from the Kemmel for keeps. The world champion, Roman Weinstein, sitting at the back here. George Hincapie deciding his time out for a quick bite before he gets on with the action again.
Great to see a competitive world champion. This man certainly proving that the world champion's curse is not going to affect him too much. We've seen him at the front of many bike races so far since the start of this season, and hopefully it won't be too long before we see him winning some great races with that jersey on his shoulders. A great man who took out a very tough world championships last year in Plouay on a circuit which really did wear down all of the opposition, but it was so very close to Andre Schmiel getting the victory on that occasion. But this man for the moment, Phil, is riding like a world champion should at the front of the one-day classics.
I couldn't agree more, and he's looking to be the most solid world champion. Poor old Oscar Freires with world champion. No, he's having problems with a back which they can't seem to solve at the minute. He's out of racing.
I think Hincapie just put his hand up there as if he's got a slight problem there. I don't see anything wrong with his machine right now. He just maybe wants a quick word with the team manager. The manager in the car today is Dirk de Mol, the former winner of Paris-Roubaix. And it could be that that's all George wants, to take on board a little bit more food and drink, or maybe a quick word with the man who knows how to handle the tactical jockeying about that we're going to have in a short while, because certainly 2 riders from Telecom will try and keep this race together. Now, it's taken a long time for the team car to get up there, but yes, that's all it was for Georgie, just taking on board an extra drink.
The number 14 on the back of the team car means that they've pulled a pretty rough number in the convoy order today. That's a long way down, number 14, but of course now there are 12 teams in this breakaway. He'll be a lot nearer the front. There's the bunch, and still no real signs. This is the breakaway as we catch up again, and for the first time they've cracked here. There's a nice little gap forming.
This is a replay, Phil, actually, of the catch just a little earlier on when they'd gone over the Kemmelberg. You can see the reintegration of the riders from behind, just pulling up to the group with George Hincapie in it.
The riders race away into the distance. There's 5 guys there. Let's have a look now. Here's George Hincapie. And the Seiko rider at the back is Conti. All getting themselves tanked up ready now for the finish. There's Leon Van Bon. Looks very cool, giving nothing away here. Had a great climb of the Kemmel last time up. So too does Stefan Wesserman just over there. He's looking for some food as well.
Just to expound a little bit on that thing you said earlier, Phil, about the position of the team cars, it's very important. In the World Cup races, your position in the convoy of cars behind is related to your position in the team standings at the World Cup. So that's on a points basis. In a Tour de France or a stage race, it depends on your position in the overall standings. The first man in the overall standings has car number 1. But in the rest of the races, it's actually done like bingo. You have to put all the team's names into a bag, and it's chosen at random. And if you get a bad pick, you could have the last car in 25 cars, which means you could have a problem if one of your riders has a mechanical incident.
Yes, which is what you don't want, of course, because then you can't find him and give him a wheel in quick succession. But the echelon forming, a little bit of wind on the nose now, coming from the left of a picture. Van Bon, and he's relieved in the action there by one of the Cofidis riders. And that, in fact, is Chris Pearce coming back towards the camera. Then George Hincapie. I don't see any passengers in this breakaway at all.
Everybody's pretty excited to come to the front and keep the tempo on at the moment. But especially on these roads here, when the wind is coming across from the left-hand side, it's much easier to ride through with the train, because at least you get a fairly good sheltering from the wind. And the wind is fairly strong here in Ghent Wevelgem at the moment. But somebody's left the gap, and it's up to Balducci to start the line rolling again.
And Pizix, the champion of Latvia, good little sprinter, but basically overall a very strong bike rider. As this is Wesserman coming back, he's rushing forth. Looks as though I might be looking for Eric Zabel there to give him a drink. This is Thor Hushovd, the Norwegian rider. We think a great star of the future. And Physics wants his turn now. It's funny how if one does it, they all start to do it. And they're continuing to do this at a reasonably high speed because the gap is just over 2 minutes. No signs of any consolidated chase now. And we're on the return towards the end. So we're on the final kilometres now.
Well, this is the moment where there's a certain amount of panic at the back of the group. Everybody wants to get drinks on board, having gone over the critical part of the central reservation here. The important part of this course has been the 2 circuits around the Mont Kemmel, and that's why now these guys have got over the strategic part. They're getting drinks on board because fairly shortly they know that there are going to be a lot more attacks coming, because some guys in this group would like to try and split the group. The reason being because Erik Zabel is in this group and he's the fastest man really in the world these days, the most consistent sprinter. So if they want to have a chance of winning Ghent towards the end, they have to split this group in half.
Indeed, and this is the area we're in now where poor old Erik got knocked off by a horse that ran out of a local barn farmyard last year. And the little girl who owned the horse actually wrote and apologised to Erik for the inconvenience of knocking him off. And he wrote back and said he forgave and sent her a racing jersey.
That was a pretty funny situation out on the course, but he didn't panic at all. Erik Zabel, he picked himself up, dusted himself down, abandoned the race, but carried on to have a pretty excellent season.
He certainly did, as he is doing already this year. And so we continue on. The sun is up, but believe me, it's still very cold here in Ghent Wevelgem. Barely 13 degrees Celsius, somewhere in the mid-50s the temperature today. This break getting away as we approach the Kemmel. Once over the top, we've got 14 guys clear and so many teams represented. There's nobody left behind to chase except the Rabobank boys, and they've made a huge mistake today.
Well, they've got to get themselves very organised now if they're going to try and pull back this solidly working group at the front, because it doesn't seem as if anybody wants to miss their turn of riding at the front of the pack and pushing the pace to pretty close to 50 kilometres an hour. Wevelgem going through there in the pink, looking very strong indeed. As we see at the back of the group there, Pataki taking on board extra drinks.
Continually doing that. The only Fassa Bartolo rider in the break, Alessandro Pataki, had a good year last year, sort of made his name on the regular circuit last year. Now he's riding pretty well.
Well, Erik Zabel consistently riding at the back of the group here, Phil. I think the only thing Zabel can be thinking about now is that the group does stay together and he has a chance of taking out the sprint. A lot of panic at the back there just a few moments ago as well, because you can see the wind very strong from the left-hand side, which is why we've got this diagonal echelon right across the road here. And Zabel tucked in there. That's a very risky place to be for a bike rider. In fact, a little bit too risky.
Oh. Well, there's a bit of a balancing act being done there. This is not the stretch of road that Erik Zabel likes, is it? Because he had a problem here last year.
It's exactly the same section of road that he found himself being jumped upon by a horse last year. Well, that wasn't a very clever move for Erik Zabel, and I was just on the point of saying that is one of the most dangerous places to be, because if there is a wave moves down the line of riders, the guy sitting at the back usually gets it and gets popped off the back. We'll have another look at that.
Well, let's see if it's Physics eased him out. No, it wasn't. Erik trying to squeeze in up the inside of his Physics. The line moves over. Physics moves over. Erik leaves the hard surface. And he was lucky it wasn't softer than that, otherwise it might have thrown him. But he's a great bike rider. And his open mouth there, I think it was a little bit of a shock.
Open mouth there, I think more in panic than gasping for breath, because his heart rate will have bumped right up there, but he was back onto the machine pretty quickly. He's fortunate that all of the team cars are in there, so he should be back in the group pretty smartly. In fact, he already is.
Yeah, I should think that's something that many club cyclists have done, and you know the horrible feeling you get when you get off the road. You think you're going to fall. But Erik's fine. He's coming back. He's no problems as the break continues, working well. A good unit this. This is why there's nobody ever going to catch up with this group. They are just riding so solidly.
Everybody working there. Leon van Bon must be thinking about the possibility of a victory here. The team Mercury VTL certainly need a good performance during the classics, Phil, if they're going to get selection for the Tour de France. 4 slots left for selection for that great race in the month of July, and Mercury VTL feel that they've got a big chance of taking that out. In fact, rumour coming to us that Greg LeMond will be making an appearance at the upcoming Paris-Roubaix, just to do a little bit of politicking, I would think, with his former friends at the Society Tour de France, to see if he can persuade them that Mercury VTL deserves a slot in the Tour in July.
Well, they've certainly got the riders, nobody can deny that. Now they want just 1 or 2 more classic performances, but we're seeing them in the action. They are having some rotten luck, as I said earlier, though. They've lost last year's winner now, Geert van Bont. crashed out on the coast near Ostend today. And we are now on a gentle little climb here, just 7%. And these boys still working very, very well together. No passengers yet.
No passengers for the moment, but we will surely be coming to a slightly narrower section of the course where if anybody has the legs, there's a couple of nice inclines, and with this crosswind you could force a splitting in the group. That's Nico Martin there, number 81, moving up through the inside. He wants to stay pretty close to the front of the main field right now.
Georgi Hincapie sitting at the back, those big bronze legs there, watching everything. George has finished 4th in this race before, and he loves this period of racing in the Belgian-French borders. And he's he seems to have chosen Leon Van Bon. He always seems to be riding behind or in front of Leon.
Well, Hincapie has to ride a fairly sensible race now, because in his early years as a professional, he was a very good sprinter. And Noël de Joncker, who used to look after the Motorola cycling team, was trying to groom George Hincapie to be a bunch sprinter. He's got a very good turn of speed. But unfortunately for George, there's a very fast man here in the name of Eric Zabel there, wearing number 81. And Leon Van Bon himself, pretty rapid finisher. So Hincapie is going to have to think seriously now about the run into the finish and whether or not he's got the strength to get round a man like Eric Zabel, because once you launch a guy like Eric Zabel at the finish line, it is very easy, it's very difficult to get by him. But Rabobank feel that they've got the strength in their ranks to pull this race back together.
Well, Art Verhoeven is the rider doing the work. He's just swung off the front. The Rabobanks are still trying to make a little bit of an effort to keep this realistic, but with just 20 miles to ride to the finish, and can't see them crossing this gap, which is still 2 minutes. What they are doing is virtually locking out. They're not getting away that breakaway anymore, but these guys are simply not getting any closer either.
If you have a look at the front of the main field now, there's a couple of teams going forward, but they're actually glass cranking or slowing down the pace at the front there. The grey jerseys of Domo Farm Frites, they don't want to pick the pace up because they've got their money all bet on the man who is the world champion, Ronan Weinsteins. So that's why they're following the Rabobank riders through and then causing a little bit of a break in the line, therefore just slowing down the momentum. You see they're spreading across the road again right now, so the pressure really not on 100% in the main field.
No, and they know now, they will know for sure now, they're not going to cross this gap. They're just going to keep this race looking rather respectable, I would say, as they race down to the finish. Many of them enjoying the fast pedaling training on this Wednesday afternoon as they warm up now for their journey across to Compiègne and the start of Paris-Roubaix. They'll get over there on Thursday or Friday, and on Friday, which is the day after tomorrow, they will actually probably ride the Forest of Arlenberg, check out the new stretches of cobblestones that have been discovered in that region. And we go back to the forest in Paris-Roubaix a different way again this year, back to the old original routing. And then they'll settle down Saturday for the prelims. Sunday, they'll be in the thick of Paris-Roubaix. So this, to these riders in the peloton now, will be more thinking of that classic than this one.
14 guiders in the front, though, they're thinking about the win today, and they're obviously thinking about how they can dislodge Eric Zabel from his position in that group. A little bit of a spin round there to take another look at the front of the main field. CSC Online as well won't want to do too much work, and they will also try and break the tempo at the front because they feel that their man Arvis Pizix has probably got a pretty good chance of finishing pretty close to the podium at the end. Farm Frites, defensive role for them as well, just going through, just trying to back off the pace, and the leaders still feel very much content to set the pace making at the front.
Well, they're absolutely flying still. Little backlog of motorbikes there. Race referees have cleared them out of the way as Daniela Nardello sets the pace. A very neat little rider, Nardello. And when you expect to see him in stage races, he turns up with great performances in these single-day races on occasion. But they're picking up this wind here, and they're absolutely moving now at about 45 kilometers an hour. So they're never going to bring this group back.
This is a tough section of the course here along these small roads leading up to the main road from Yper to Menen, and then once they get through Menen there will be only about 5 kilometers from the finish line in Wevelgem. A very famous finish, a long straight finish, ideal for the sprinters. Just what you would need if you're a man like Eric Zabel is a perfect lead out coming from Stefan Weserman. Weserman just at the back there in the pink jersey wearing number 67, while a bit further back we've got the Lotto rider in the group here, Nico Eekhout, getting a small amount of advice from the team management. He's a lone rider in this group. Very good form for him so far this season. The winner early on in February of the Étoile de Bessèges, one of the season openers, but right now getting himself caught out on the wrong side of that line.
Yes, and look at that time gap now, 2:42. That's really stretched out to heading to 3 minutes at the 31 kilometer point. There's the names again for you, the composition of this leading break. 12 teams represented, 14 riders in the lead. The world champion riding solidly at the back at the moment, Roman Weinsteins, but he has had such a great start to the year and he's already riding as a winner. Weinsteins, stage of Tirreno Adriatico this year, and then that great third place in the opening classic, Milan-San Remo, behind Mario Cipollini and Eric Zabel, the winner, and 10th last week in the Tour of Flanders. He's well up, actually, Paul, in the World Cup race. I would have thought he'd want to think more of Paris-Roubaix on Sunday.
And what's more important for him is to get the first major win under the belt for Domo Farm Freaks, because although they've been billed as the #1 team in the world, they have still to prove that they are a strong competitive team. It's always difficult when you try and build a new team for the first time, because you don't have all the automatic responses that you have from riding with a bunch of riders for an awful long time. I think fairly shortly they will gel together, because when you've got men like Wilfred Peters and Johan Museo in a squad, they will teach the younger riders how to work well in the classic races. And after all, they are really the nucleus of the old Mappe squad, who were the kingpins in the classic one-day events.
Oh, that was the location of the horse, but I think this time around it's all okay. They've closed the gate as the race goes through. Eric Zabel can be very happy in the thought there'll be no extra rider in the race in the next few seconds or so.
Looks like exactly the same horse as last year, actually.
I think
Maybe it was. And he was hoping to get out and say, hello, how are you doing, to Eric Zabel once again. Zabel riding pretty close to the front of the pack here, but he's now safe and sound past the horse and now able to think about the possibility of taking out a victory in Ghent Wevelgem. A race that in the past, Phil, really has very much been regarded as a sprinter's race. We've seen great battles in recent years between Mario Cipollini and Jamaluddin Abdou-Japarov. But since they've changed the route to have this much more rolling run into the finish, it always seems to have been an advantage to the breakaways.
Yes, that's right, and that break usually settles in after the second climb of the Kemmel. Although it has in the past, including last year, it's gone the first time and the riders haven't been able to hang on. It went the first time up this time as well, but now there's nobody going to come back. The decision is made today. It's a question now, Paul, is can George Hincapie deliver what he promises so much and so often in these early season events? Can he win?
Well, he's going to have to be attentive, because I'm absolutely certain that this group will split up because of the presence of Eric Zabel in there. The two riders who are likely to attack the most are the two Cofidis riders, both riding very well this year, Chris Peers and Nico Matin. Those two riders have the ability to attack alternatively with the possibility of splitting the break into two.
2:36, a slight reduction. Good tempo riding coming from the peloton. They'll have to close faster than that, but you never know. I can't see them coming back too closely to this group away now. This is Biagio Conti. Just see his red shorts there. He's a rider who's in the breakaway, and this is Patacchi. The Italians mixing it with the specialist of this area, which are the Belgian cyclists, who always ride well and doing very well indeed over the years of winning this event. Biagio Conti, by the way, is already a stage winner this year in Tirreno Adriatico, but he shot to the fore last year when he won a stage of the Giro d'Italia, but that was on the disqualification of the winner, and so he may not count that.
Well, I tell you what, looking down through the list of names in this group, there's a lot of good sprinters, because Conti himself is a good sprinter when it comes down to the finish. He's usually very much regarded as a lead-out man for Mario Cipollini, but given his own chance, he does on occasion show the peloton a clean pair of wheels coming down to the finish line. It looks now as if the tempo is knocking off a little bit in this group, Phil. I think probably because certain riders are now thinking about when and where they should attack. The Belgian riders taking the advantage because they know this course intimately, having ridden most of it during the winter in training. And you can see just how bad the weather has been looking down there at the boggy Belgian side roads. And it's hard to try and remember sometimes that some men fought in these fields for 5 years and lived in conditions like that. It's really quite remarkable. It's very historic when you come through this part of Belgium and remember what those guys went through in the 1914-18 war.
Yes, very, very sorry war indeed. Probably one of the last wars that was in hand-to-hand combat. And indeed, the history spread all over this area of Flanders. The many, many army graves that abound here of all of the big English-speaking nations of the world. Anyway, back to the Ghent Wevelgem race. It's 2 minutes 21 now. As you can see, we've just hit the 25 kilometers to go. Shade over 15. Very good average speed today, 42.6 kilometres in the hour. It's about 27 miles an hour, maybe just a bit slower, 26.5. But that's a good average speed when you know the roads that these riders have been round and the strong winds they've all had coming in off the coast earlier today.
Well, watch out for the attack now coming from Cofidis, the team management up alongside there, handing out a few drinks, but it's also a possibility to come alongside the riders and say, look guys, you know, we've got Eric Zabel in this group, we need to attack if we want a chance of winning the bike race. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the first man to come out of that group being Nico Martin, because he's got pretty good legs right now. Serge Boucherie in the Crédit Agricole team car coming up alongside Hushvod. He would probably be quite astounded to see his man riding up alongside the real big names of the one-day classics, and I think they're going to have to look after that rider, because certainly he is a good rider for the future.
Yes, I think they've got a young star there, and the Crédit Agricole riders are not really firing right now. They had a great start to the season with Stuart O'Grady again picking up the Tour Down Under in Australia, but Stewie hasn't really found himself since then. Jens Voigt is a big trier. We've not seen hardly anything of Magnus Bagstedt this year. He has been pulling out of races with one or two little problems. Let's hope he gets himself into shape shortly. 24 to go now. They're holding us. In fact, they're closing slightly on us at 2:21. They've taken out about 20-25 seconds. They need to do a lot more than that. But as I speak, it is still coming down.
I don't think it's coming down quick enough right now. You've only got one team on the front trying to chase, that's Rabobank, and you've got a lot of teams trying to mess up the tempo on the front of the main field. You can see this is Team Coast coming forward. That's Mikkelsen. He's got a man in there, Frankie Hoy, who's the possibility of a good sprint when it comes down to the finish. But you can see it's only one team really putting the pressure on here. It's Rabobank from Holland, the huge losers. And I tell you one thing, in their team bus after the finish, they'll be getting a serious talking to from the team management.
Yes, when you're a pro bike rider, you don't miss a break of 14 without putting a team man in it. That's what they'll be told. And of course, they were unlucky in some ways. They had the riders at the start of the move, and Sven Nys couldn't hold them on the way uphill. A little bit of inexperience from a man who's a great cyclocross rider, the winter end of the sport, but he's still very much a learner when it comes to this level of pro bike racing. Gap still continues to come down. About half a minute they've chipped off now. That's not fast enough. And it's all down to Rabobank now. Nobody is assisting them at all. Here they all are, line astern, as they try now to keep the pressure on. Koen Boeman is the man setting the pace. Sven Nys is still here. Matty Heyman, Mate Pronk and Art Vierhouten are the riders getting stuck into the work.
Well, the man in the red jersey there is Nikolai Bo Larsen. He shouldn't really be riding through like this at all, because his man Arvis Pizix is in the front group, and he's actually encouraging the move and work of the Rabobank riders just now. The Domo Farm Friets riders, well, they're sitting in the next few places in the main field. They will not come to the front at all. If it does all come back together, they've got some pretty serious riders in here. Johan Museo having a fairly sensible ride today, trying to ride himself into some kind of form for the upcoming Paris-Roubaix. A race where I still feel in the back of my mind, Phil, that Museo has got a great chance of taking out the win again, because he's such a tough bike rider, and he'll use this race, I think, as preparation to go forward to Paris-Roubaix and be competitive.
Well, I think a lot of people think like you, Paul. They would love Museo to come back. This man is such a dedicated bike rider, looks after himself so well, despite the knocks and bangs he takes, which nearly ended not just his career but his life, and he comes bouncing back. And back he is again, and I think, well, I'm sure we'll see him again in the action on Sunday. Well, 2:11 now, so they're making some progress. That concerted team time trial, it is coming down, and if we can get inside 2 minutes, they might turn this around. But at 22 kilometres to go, the front runners are going to be kept well informed of the pack behind.
Gabriele Balducci is the rider there from Vinnie Calderillo team as we go through Hollebeck. Stefan Weissermann has been doing a lot of work at the front of this group, Phil, trying to keep them off the front. And he's going to have to knock back a little bit, I think, because he's the man who will have to respond to any attacks which are going to come, and I'm certain they will come. And I'm absolutely certain it's going to come from the Cofidis riders, because they're very aggressive, the Belgians, when they get into this group right now, and they've both got very good form. Chris Piers, I think, having an excellent season. That's Piers moving forward right now, and you can see Georgie Hincapie is marking the Cofidis rider, so he's probably been hearing what's been said by the team management when they've come up alongside to hand drinks to these riders.
Well, you know, if you take this over the last 26 kilometres, then in fact the peloton has lost 2 seconds to the breakaway, although they're coming back at 46 kilometres to go. The lead is 2:08, and now here we are showing 2 minutes 10, so that's hardly a chase back, is it? There's Hushoft in the red shorts, the man who is so easy to pick out with the different coloured shorts. The man just peeping into our picture in the white shorts, Domo. A new team on the block, having taken away a lot of the Mappe boys to form this new team out of Belgium with Patrick Lefebvre. That's the world champion, Veensteins, and he's had a great start to the season, winning very early on this year.
See how narrow these roads are in the Flanders. Very difficult to get two lines across the road, and you want to make sure that you do follow the line through, because if you get caught at the back, well, you see an incident as happened to Eric Zabel about 10 kilometers ago. You can very easily get popped off the end and into the dike at the side, and that dike, I have to tell you, looking at the side of the road here, is very muddy indeed.
And I'm sure it's quite smelly too, so you'll have no friends if you fall in there today, I can tell you. Anyway, this is the break. There is the mud fields of Flanders, as the riders now still press on. The wind's still hitting them, but they're making light work of it today. It's not exactly gale force anyway, but it is barren, and you can see now just how barren this countryside is at springtime, and especially, of course, in the winter when the temperatures plummet to about -3 or 4 Celsius. 209, we're almost exactly what the distance was in 26 kilometers now. 209 is the exact same time check we got at 46, and now again at 20.
So I can see, because of the slowing off in this tempo, one or two guys are certainly thinking about the attack that they're going to launch. This section of road here is the best area really to launch an attack. It's still fairly narrow. There's a couple of long false flats before we get onto the main road, and that's where I would think we'll see an attack coming from somebody to try and split this group up. But it most certainly got to come from Cofidis, because the only other team with two riders represented is Team Telecom, and Stefan Wevelgem must work for Eric Zabel, who's the fastest man in this group.
Well, I'm quite sure that somebody will attack, because they're not going to carry a 14-man group to the finish. There'll be a lot of riders will have no confidence in the sprint. Nardello is not a bad little sprinter, but there are others here I would think who would try and go. Wevelgem might try and go and then rely on Zabel to clean up in the sprint when we get down there. This might be a problematical last few kilometres for George Hincapie. He's on his own, remember, here. And there's a whistle from the group, and that's why, because there's an attack on the far right of the road.
Well, it's one of the Cofidis riders. That's the move I was expecting. It looks like Nico Martin has gone clear. He knows what this course is like, and this is one of the false flats, slightly uphill. Nico Martin, by the way, was a former time trial champion of Belgium, so he's got the ability to ride off the front and stay clear to the finish. But I would see now Team Telecom coming to the front, Phil, and actually putting the pressure on with Stefan Wevelgem to try and pull back this attack. But the speed of this attack could split the group.
Martin third in this race in 1998, now going for the big win. And he looks like he's gone at 19 kilometres to go, and Nico Martin, and it's all change again, because it looks like Van Bon has reached him, and also that'll be Wevelgem who's got across. These are the strong men now, and we predicted Wevelgem might try this, and he's joined the leaders.
Well, I'm not surprised to see that move coming from Nico Martin. Now, these are three very strong riders off the front. There is the main field now. Who will chase? This is the time to hit them, because as we get this distance from the finish, 19 kilometres right now, riders will be wanting to hold back a little bit, saving a little bit for the final move towards the finish. Somebody else is going across the gap there. It looks like Pizix might be the next man to make the move.
Arvis Pizix, the little man from Latvia, the champion, has gone, and he's also now raced across the gap. Now George Hincapie is going to have to make some decisions.
Well, he has done already, because there he is.
is.
Pretty impressive. I didn't see him. Hincapie must have actually gone before Pizix. I thought I could see the shadow of another rider just in front of Pizix, but Hincapie must have bolted out of that group, Phil, because he's right there now. We've got 4 men in the lead, and Pizix halfway across.
So 5, is it 4 or 5, Paul? We've got Pizix, Martin, Wevelgem, Van Bon, Hincapie. It should be 5 up there now, and that leaves 9 here to muster the chase. Now, what are they going to do? Are they going to try and chase? There's the leaders, 5 of them. Oh, and there's 1, 2, yeah, 5 of them. That's right. Now let's pull back and see if they're making gaps. Pizix, the last man to bridge the gap.
He hasn't quite done it yet. He's hammering to get onto the back here, but this is a strong working group now, and you can see the main field just moving over to the right-hand side. Daniele Nardello has seen the danger now. He's trying to ride across to get himself up there, but he's got a lot of guys sitting on his tail. He's with him now is Gabriele Balducci. This is Husvod coming across, Nico Eichhout as well, and there is the lead. It's only around about 120 meters just now, and I think we can see that Daniele Nardello is going to make the junction.
Well, let's have a look, because a lot of firepower has now gone from the Veenstein group here, having taken strong pacemakers like Hincapie, Van Bon and Wevelgem away. I think Pizix was waiting for the move. He's made it. And looking there at the Cofidis rider, that is Chris Pearce. He's not going to chase now with Martin up there. Neither is Zabel. Interesting combination, Paul. It might work.
May well work right now because we've got a couple of teams who are represented in the front group. Cofidis is certainly not going to chase, and neither are Team Telecom. I think now they will give the advantage to Stefan Weserman, but it's very close for the moment. It's not very much more than 100 meters. Stefan Weserman looking over his shoulder. For him, the most important thing is to try and figure out if he can actually win this bike race or take the win away from Erik Zabel. Erik Zabel, if the group comes back together, is the best man. There's a little bit of chit-chat going on there, probably encouragement to go to the front. Weserman may well have said to Pizzics, look, I'll work with this group if you'll come up and work with us. This is Nardello again trying to get off the front. Shadowing him is Nico Eickhout. And Nardello, click of the arm there, trying to get Eickhout to come forward. These two riders making the effort, but it's Petacchi coming. And you can tell one Italian chasing another. Nardello not happy with that.
I don't blame him, but it's all over. They've marked Nardello and also Nico, so they're back in the group. Now, if the flurries continue like this, then the stop-go situation might push these 5 men clear. They're not that far ahead. There you are in the distance. You can see the 5 men who've made the move. Delighted to see that Hincapie again paying attention, assessed it, and then quickly got across to it.
It seems as if George has changed his tactics a little bit. Rather than waiting for other people to take him across the gap, he's actually taken the initiative much more often now. And as soon as he saw that move, which looked like a good one, he didn't wait for anybody else to go. He leapt across the gap himself. This now is very good for the breakaways. These guys are zigzagging across the road. Nobody actually wants to work anymore. They haven't got anyone in there. You can see Eickhout circling his arm there. What he wants to do is to organize the group so they can start to pull back, and this will be a major advantage now for the riders in front. You see there's no help at all coming in that group. Definitely a lot of misorganization.
None whatsoever, and this is rather serious now when it happens like this, because then the riders lose the momentum, and before it, well, look at the gap opening. Just because they freewheeled, it's gone from 15 to 18 seconds now for the 5 leaders.
Well, the 5 leaders contained Stefan Weserman. I would expect Weserman not to work too hard in that leading group, Phil, because he knows in the group behind he's got a very strong candidate for victory. Eickhout again trying to get off the front. And in fact, Erik Zabel here doing the work of a teammate. He's moving across onto these attacks and then just sitting up. And this is breaking the rhythm of the chase group behind. Balducci now taking over and moving to the front there. The white jersey is that of Alessandro Petacchi.
It's not often you see a teammate actually try to break up the chase. They tend to just sit there and not take part in it, but that's what Zabel is doing right now. There he is, number 61, chasing again Eickhout. On the far side, though, Weinstein's is attacked. They know now that this race is going away from them. 24 seconds the gap. Big effort by the world champion now on this little rise to try and shake out a few of those sitting on and find some willing to take up the chase. And I don't think he's got any takers.
Well, it's a bit unfortunate for the world champion that these riders now in this group are all individuals. He doesn't have a teammate in there, and it seems as if all the alliances that might have been created early on as everybody was working together have now been broken by the fact that we've got a 5-man lead group. There was Ronan Weinstein trying to stir up the pace at the front. They need a strong rider in this group now to stamp on the handlebars and say, come on, we need to work, get the 2 lines going. Let's start to organize the chase and try and pull back the 5 leaders. You can see the 5 leaders just there on the right-hand side. Their advantage now, Phil, opening up to 26 seconds. So they will start to gain morale by the fact that they'll get good time checks coming through.
Well, our cameraman just about kept it up there as he swooped out of that right-hand bend, but he's still with the riders. Here's Nardello. 10 miles to the finish now, or almost 30 seconds to the good for George Hincapie. Leon van Bon is there as well. Arvis Pizzics, Stefan Weserman, and Nico Matan. Matan was the one that started the attack. Van Bon spotted it. No, Van Bon was the one that started the attack, and Matan spotted it. And thank heavens, so too did George Hincapie.
There are the 5 leaders. Now Hincapie's just done his turn at the front and he's very keen to move across. Instead of waiting for Pizzics to come through there to the front, he actually immediately went over there to increase the pace-making at the front of this leading group of 5. It seems now, Phil, as if this chase group now, the second half of the split, which is made up of just 9 riders, are getting themselves organized, but they won't get any help from number 61 or from number 83. 61 is Erik Zabel, 83 is Chris Peers, and those 2 riders both have a representative in the leading group of 5.
And they're working well together at the back, but now the magical half minute is up as we're running in at 15 kilometers to go. Weinstein is the hard worker and he's being helped occasionally by the lesser experienced Hushoft, but Zabel isn't going to do anything, and neither is Chris Peers.
There's one of the traffic circles and moving into one of these towns not too far away from Menen. And on the front, it's Stefan Weserman in person who is accelerating. He may well have got the nod from the team management, Phil, to ride his own race today. He is a great one-day rider and I think in excellent form right now. Had a fairly solid race last weekend in the Tour of Flanders when he was one of the strongest riders in the race. He will also be looking at being one of the team leaders when we go through to Paris-Roubaix on Sunday. And in a situation like this, in a five-man group, he's got his chances of taking out the victory, while in the meantime taking the responsibility off the shoulders of Erik Zabel. Zabel can sit in this group now, Phil, and just have a nice easy ride along. All he has to do is hope that it comes back together at the finish. If it does, then he'll take up the responsibility of being the team sprinter and show everybody a clean pair of wheels on the run into the finish line in Wevelgem, because Zabel is a magnificent sprinter. Pataki now taking up the rear of the group. Just in front of him there, 83, is Chris Peers. Hushvod probably quite excited by the fact that he's riding with some of the top names in the world of professional cycling, but this group has certainly not completely laid down arms as the time gap now extends out to 34 seconds. They're still hammering along at almost 48 kilometers an hour. This has been a very fast Ghent Wevelgem here today. As you can see, Chris Peers looking across at the team car. Team car shouting up some information, probably letting him know that his man Nico Martin is feeling good in the front group. And certainly he's got a great chance of taking out the victory.
Looking down then at the chasers, who are losing ground now. This 14-man break that got away on the Kemmelberg, consolidated on the second lap, and is now heading for the finish in two groups, one of 5 and one of 9, and the gap is opening inch by inch. It's like prizing open a clam here. 35 seconds the gap, 14 kilometers still to go.
Hincapie looking very good here, Phil, very calm and relaxed, but it's a strange situation. We've got a group of 5 riders, 3 of them are very good sprinters. We must certainly get another attack on the run into the finish from Nico Martin, because that's probably the only chance he's got of winning if he can slip away from the leading group of 5. But for the moment, all of them must work together to stay ahead of the 9 riders behind. The gap, as you said, 35 seconds. And Stefan Weserman himself must be thinking of a way to outfox these very fast men that he's joined.
Well, George has got to feel he's done everything right today for starters, because he was made sure he was at the top of the climb up both climbs of the Kemmelberg, which got him firmly into the breakaway of 14. He's not short of legs at all because he's driving on here. He's never wandered far from the side of Leon Van Bon. And of course, they are now this year for the first time on rival American teams. OK, US Postal, they are in the Tour de France, but the Mercury Viatel are not yet, and that's what their main ambition is.
Pretty dramatic long shadows as these riders head in towards the finish line in Wevelgem now. It's approaching 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and these 5 men are opening up a pretty smart advantage over a group of 9 behind, which has a fair amount of impetus, although it's got some pretty serious passengers, one of them called Erik Zabel. Zabel at the moment playing the team role for this man in pink in 3rd position here, Stefan Weserman. Weserman, a very compact, tough rider, ideally built for the one-day races. And on the other hand, number 81 there, Nico Martin, is an exceptionally good individual time trialist. Not very good at sprinting, but he's up against some tough sprinters. Leon Van Bon, I would think here, thinking about the possibility of getting a great stage victory for him. Van Bon, a lot lower in the saddle than he seems to have been in recent years, but a very explosive man in a situation like this.
Well, Nico Martin is a very, very solid bike rider here, and this could be a great result for Cofidis. He's had a place before 2 years ago, and you know, he's had to fight back from a number of strange illnesses. One with the problems with his heart, which was at the start of the 1999 season. Then he fractured his hip in a nasty crash in the Tour of Flanders last year. Here he is now, back on form again. A bit like the story of Johan Museeuw, really.
Well, it's all about comeback. Any bike rider has got to be a pretty tough guy, and if you have all those injuries that are thrown at you like Martin and Johan Museeuw, you've got to be strong to fight back and bring yourself back again to the top of the sport. Erik Zabel there in pink, just riding near the front of the group. He's not too keen on encouraging these riders to get onto the tail of the leading group of 5, because he's probably giving his teammate and friend Stefan Weserman a free card today to try and get a stage victory. George Hincapie up in the top right-hand corner there, looking very strong, perfectly positioned on his saddle, trying to cast his mind back, I would say, Phil, to the days when he was regarded as a top bunch sprinter. Some of his very best performances came in bunch sprints when he got a whole host of podium positions, but today he's looking at making history for himself and getting his first one-day classic win, something that he's been chasing for a very long time.
Absolutely. Well, the breakaway is in the little box on the right. These are the chasers we're looking at below. The gap slowly but surely is opening here, and George is dropping back here, making sure everybody's working in the line, gets Physics in front of him. Then comes his shadow, Van Bon, looking where George has gone. Now, is George putting Van Bon in front of him? I wonder. He is, I think. So George has missed a round there.
Well, I wondered if he had a little problem there because he got out of the saddle and maybe he was just stretching his thighs out, because at the moment these guys have been using monster gears as we get now into the outskirts of Maine, and we're not too far away from turning onto the big main road up to Wevelgem. The confirmation of the members in the group here, and it's going to be a very big battle between Van Bon and George Hincapie. But watch out for the late attack coming from Nico Martin, because he will certainly want to surprise these riders in the front group.
Martin, the recent winner of the 3 days of De Panne, which is a very good win for him. He also got a terrific win in the prologue of Paris-Nice this year. He beat his teammate and the British rider David Miller, who must have been a bit stunned by that performance by Nico. Anyway, Martin leading them through and feeling full of confidence at this early part of the year 2001 season. Back in the chase group, life is livening up by the look of it. A couple of riders sprinting off the front, causing an acceleration by Weinsteins at the back.
This is pretty strange to see. Weinsteins, the world champion, he's actually been at the back nearly every time we've come here to look at this group, Phil. He is the current world champion, wears #1 and the rainbow jersey, but he hasn't done a whole lot in this group to the success of trying to chase down the 5 men in the front, and that's a bit surprising right now. He may well have had team orders coming through from the team car and Patrick Lefevre, because they're thinking very seriously, I think, about this race at the weekend, Paris-Roubaix. It's a race that they want to perform well in, but in a situation like this, he's in an ideal position to try and get a first important win for Domo Farm Friet, and for the new Belgian team on the block, it would be very important to win here at Ghent Wevelgem. The 5 leaders still working very much together. Kop van der Wegstrijd, by the way, means that they are the leading riders, the front of the bike race, as they go around one of these the little dangerous roundabouts.
And a little split there, because it looks like Westerman left the door open on Physics' wheel. He's got back easy enough. Martin tucked in on his shoulder. Here comes George across the line. Slips up behind Nico, out of the wind. And there comes his shadow, Leon Van Bon. It looks to me as though Leon Van Bon has decided that George is the man to beat in the sprint today. He knows how inspired he is. Physics missed the turn there and has now allowed the door to open to put Westerman in. And the pressure very much on. They're all hanging on to George here. What a turn of speed he's got.
Well, this is getting caught out at the back here. The world champion there playing silly games with Alessandro Petacchi, and he's actually lost the tail of the group there. He's going to have to respond pretty rapidly. In fact, it's Husvod is the man making the effort to come back up there onto the tail of the rest of the group. Petacchi, the man being caught out. This is a silly game to play when you're so close to the finish of a one-day classic, and not the sort of game you expect to see a world champion playing.
No, I think to a degree, Weinsteins is deciding the race is done now, and he'll save his strength to race another day and just have a nice little workout, because he stopped working completely. And if you remember when the split happened, he was doing all of the work to try and get across, found no takers. So I think his attitude now is, well, I'll sit at the back, you can all do what you like, and I'll try and win what would be the 6th place of the day. We'll see.
What you're trying to say is he's taken his ball home and doesn't want to play anymore.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Paul. I couldn't have put it more succinctly.
Well, at the front it's more serious, because in fact there's a small attack going there. It looks as if there was an acceleration, and it had come from Nico Martin. But Georgie Hincapie is very attentive, and I think you're right, Phil. I've got a feeling that Leon Van Bon is going to base the last few kilometres of his race on the position of Georgie Hincapie. But watch out for Arvis Physics. He could be the dark horse in this group, because a few years ago he had proved to be quite a good sprinter himself, but in recent years he's been sort of moving around trying to find a place for himself in the sport of professional cycling. He hasn't really come up with the goods that he was promising when he first turned professional for the Novell team and then switching across to Rabobank.
And then he went to Memory Card in Scandinavia. That team now gone and been picked up largely by the CSC World Online boys. That's why Arvis tends to speak English with a lilt of a Scandinavian now, because he had a few years on the Scandinavian teams. A very good bike rider, had some good victories in his time. National champion of Latvia, and last year he picked up the Dunkirk 4-day race, which in fact is more than 4 days. And we remember him riding so well in the Tour du Pont, because he got a stage win back in 1996 in that event in the States.
Well, as you say, the man in 3rd position there now, Nico Martin, in excellent form right now, coming through the Tour of Flanders with an awful lot of bad luck, where he had 2 punctures and 2 crashes. He came off the win there from the 3 days of La Panna, so his form obviously spot on for the classic season. But to win this race today, Phil, he has to put in a late attack and try and surprise these guys. And if he does, he's a very difficult man to nail back. Hincapie very nervous indeed, looking to try and move off the front, keep the pace high. He doesn't want a surprise comeback from that group behind.
Nervous moments now as we enter the last 3 miles of today's classic. Hincapie exactly where he wants to be, and the pressure on him. He's finished 4th in this race before, so he'll want to at least make a top 3 finish now for the US. And he knows he's got problems here because Leon Van Bon is one of the most tricky bike riders. He's a good sprinter too. There he is. Mercury will feel very confident in him today as he moves up on the wheel of Matan. I feel Matan, Pizix and probably Wevelgem are going to have to break away from these 5 to do anything.
Hincapie swings across there, taking a look at his rivals right now. He seems to be having a few problems with his gears, Phil. He keeps changing gears on a consistent basis. Swinging over to the right here, Matan is leading them through the final few corners now as we come up to the outskirts of the town of Wevelgem, and then it's going to be a long straight 2 kilometers up to the finishing line right outside the church. Matan dropping back. Hincapie still looks good, still got very supple legs, but you will see, I think, a big marking between him and Leon Van Bon, and that is very often where a sprinter gets caught out in these small group finishes. When there are 5 riders or 6 riders, the sprinters tend to watch each other, wanting to be the last man to make the effort on the run into the finish.
A lot of urgency still with these riders. They're going to keep the pressure up. They don't want to allow anybody else into their patch now. Not with this race running out of kilometers. Pizix seems to be just grabbing at straws here, and Wevelgem not working as solid. George wondering where he's gone, looked over his shoulder, left the gap open, has to sprint it closed down. A lot of riders now, you can see their brains ticking over, are now thinking how they're going to win this race. This won't be an easy one.
Hincapie looks calm, you know. He's still got a lot of nervousness about him. He's looking over his shoulder, being very attentive to the other riders in the breakaway, keeping a close eye obviously on Leon Van Bon, but when 3 riders come by him, he knows there should be a 5th, and he doesn't want that man to stay too long at the back. Wevelgem now will play a defensive role. He's got the strong position of knowing that if they do get caught on the run-in, Erik Zabel is the man who's going to take out the sprint. I don't think that will happen because they're still a long way behind. 59 seconds is the gap back to the second group on the road, so almost certainly the winner must come from this group, but they can't play around too much.
Yes, and remember the breakaway has been on for so long because of the 2 climbs of the Kemmel. There's nobody else going to get back now. There's too much tiredness, too many teammates playing their own tactics. These 4 are now riding. The gap is now rounded off to 1 minute exactly, where it says 4 kilometers, but of course very shortly that's going to flick to 3. We are now on the run into the finish.
Hincapie's legs look good. They're still ticking over nicely. They don't look as if he's got any hint of cramp at all in there. Still a lot of suppleness in there, but look at the suppleness of Leon Van Bon, second from the back. He's keeping his gears low as well. They're just trying to loosen up the muscles before the final burst for the line, where they're going to have to hammer it right down into the largest gear that they've got and take it up to a speed in excess of 60 kilometers an hour. But they all now, Phil, are being very attentive, waiting for the last-minute attack. And look at the position here of Nico Matan. He wants to drop to the back of this group here. He's looking for an opportunity to try and put 40 or 50 meters between him and the rest of the group. And this could be the moment. He's dropped off the back, and I think he's looking to try and launch a surprise attack.
Well, they must know he's going to do this. You see the windmill on the left there. This is Belgium, not the Netherlands, of course. 3 kilometers now, 63 seconds, the gap, and here it comes. Well, he almost semaphored that to the race, and so Hincapie was on it straight away. Hincapie now racing after him. Van Bon scurries after Hincapie. A little bit slower for Wevelgem, a little bit slower for Pizix as the gap stretches open. But that's not the way to signal your intent, is it, Paul?
Well, everybody knew once he's dropped back and moved over to the right-hand side, they must have been expecting that attack. It was the only thing that Nico Matan could do. The interesting thing there, though, Phil, is the first man to respond was Georgi Hincapie. A couple of years ago, he wouldn't have done that. Right now, he's feeling super confident. He knows he's only got one man to beat in this sprint, and I think the man he realizes he must put in the performance to beat is Leon Van Bon. But it's good to see George being attentive. It's good to see him taking up the chasing, because if they'd given a man like Nico Matan 30 or 40 meters, he's really hard to pull back.
Yes, absolutely. These guys, once you're coming to the end of a race of in excess of 200 kilometers, give a man a gap, and then suddenly you find your legs on, capable of closing it down. Matan drifting to the back to try again. I wonder, at 2 kilometers to go, he may have left it too late. Now, I can't believe he can match Van Bon, Wevelgem and Hincapie in the sprint. because surely they are the three men we're looking at. Look at this now, though.
That's pretty crazy. Wevelgem is actually taking Matin off the back. Now, within 2 kilometers of the finish, this is a crazy tactic to adopt. George Hincapie again responding there to another attack. Hincapie really being attentive, but this now is Nico Matin dragging Stefan Wevelgem back into the group. These guys are playing a pretty crazy game here, getting so close to the finish. This will put a lot of pressure on Nico Matin. He has to ride himself back up to the rest of the group.
Well, that was a stupid tactic. Wevelgem shouldn't be doing that right now because he's got the legs that can win this race. And now he's chased back, and it's the 5 back together again. I'm just wondering, there's only 4 there, so where is Pizzics?
Pizzics appears to be missing from that group there. There's 4 riders right now. It may well be that Pizzics has leapt off the front of the group, and there he is. In fact, he's actually opened up a slight advantage. I never even saw him go, but there he is. Now this is dangerous, because if they don't respond right now, we could see Pizzics. There's another move there coming from Cofidis. It's Wevelgem.
It's Wevelgem again, because he's desperate now. Pizzics has gone, and this is a great piece of staying power by Arvis Pizzics, and the way to do it, I think. Surprised a little bit that Stefan Wevelgem has started the counter-attack, and because now he's put the Nico Matin in trouble, but George is having to close the gap himself, and Leon van Bon is sitting there, end of the line. And they're all back together. 5 men to go, down to the line together. I don't think any more attacks will succeed.
Well, somebody must go, and I'm sure that Nico Matin will try and put a final burst in. A lot of energy used there, though, by Stefan Wevelgem and Matin, I think, teeing up to go again, but no, they are all waiting for it. They're all ready for the move. Hincapie very much in control, attentive. Matin goes down the left-hand side. They've got to respond to this.
Under the 1 kilometre to go banner now, and it's all down to the last 1,000 metres. George Hincapie trying to become the first ever American to win Ghent Wevelgem, but he will be worried about the whereabouts of Van Bon and Wevelgem certainly, and I don't think the others are giving up their thoughts of victory either at the moment.
Pizzics now taking up 5th position, Stefan Wevelgem in 4th, and you can see right stuck in the middle there is Nico Matin. Watch out for Matin, because he's a great bike rider. Hincapie getting nervous now, looking over his shoulder. He doesn't want to get surprised by a late attack in the last 500 metres. Matin, though, is the man who's got to try and sneak off the front, but it's too late now, Phil, for a surprise attack. Very shortly they will go round the corner there, and they will have the finishing banner right up in front of them. Pizzics dropping off the back. There is Stefan Wevelgem. On the front, you've got Nico Matin. Right behind him, Georgi Hincapie. This is building up to being a very dramatic sprint. It's so difficult, and it's so easy to make mistakes after a long, hard chase. Pizzics getting the big gear going up the inside. Very tricky move there inside of Wevelgem. Wevelgem goes down the right. Hincapie's getting caught out.
Well, that was a great move by Arvis Pizzics. He came on the side nobody expected. Wevelgem has had to chase now, and Hincapie's in a spot of bother here. As we run down to line, Hincapie is looking to be in an impossible position now. He's got to come from last man if he's going to win this now. As they drive up towards the line here, this is going to be a very close run thing, because Pizzics' legs must be running out of steam now. The challenge going on the right of our picture as we look now. This is neck and neck, and Van Bon and Hincapie are coming. This is going to be right on the line. Van Bon, Hincapie. Well, that will go to the photo, Paul. But the way Van Bon has smashed his handlebars, I think he's lost it. Well, this is the voice of the Belgian television here, talking to Leon van Bon. And I think he says he's been beaten. He thinks he's been beaten anyway. As we look at the sprint, it's gone down to the photograph. Wevelgem leading out, but then came Van Bon on the left, and the rider on the right, Hincapie. They hit the line almost together.
Klopt, Amerikaanse zijde. George, congratulations. It's a nice victory, and you needed it.
I don't know if I won yet.
Yeah, you won.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we are sure.
Absoluut zeker, Karel.
Yes, absolutely certain, and there's the reason. Photo finish. George has got
sure,
it.
You win. You win Ghent Wevelgem 2001, it's sure. Otherwise you wouldn't be here.
Yeah, but the photo finish. They're looking at the photo. They're looking at the photo.
You don't need it. You win. Hij wilt het maar niet geloven. You really win, George.
He says I won. He says he's sure, but
you don't believe me.
if it's true, then I'm very happy. But I want to make sure.
Yeah, our commentators, they confirm it. You win.
Really? Then, yeah, that's good. I very much been needing to win. You know, my directors and the managers. It's been a long time since I won, but they really believe in me, and every race they say, George, you can win, and they make me believe. And I know that I can win. I just have to have everything right. But I hope this just confirms more victories to come, I hope.
It was quite tactical in the last few kilometers. Hij is nog altijd niet zeker hoor. Hij vraagt nog altijd of hij gewonnen heeft. It was quite tactical, George. You wait.
Ja.
Nu is hij helemaal zeker.
Thanks.
Hij mag er gerust in zijn.
Hij wordt gefeliciteerd.
So finally, congratulations to George Hincapie. He doesn't believe it, but he has won.
It was quite tactical in the last few kilometers. You wait just long enough to go for your sprint.
Yeah, you know, it was very tactical. And actually I didn't wait. I had to chase down Nico Matan. I had to chase down a lot of the guys that attacked. I chased them down most of the time.
So now you're one of the favorites for Paris-Roubaix, you know?
That's where one of my main things. Yes, of course I want to win Roubaix. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
I wish you good luck for Sunday.
Parijs-Roubaix is inderdaad zijn.
George there in a state of shock. Let's catch up with him now with Paul Sherwin.
A few nervous moments there waiting for the results to come through.
Yeah, definitely. I was very nervous, and I would have been pretty upset if I didn't win that race, because I tried to do everything I could in the last couple kilometers. I was closing all the gaps and making sure that I kept it together. So I felt like I was the strongest, and I felt like I should have won the race, and I did.
It was a little bit nervous on the run-in though, because there were 5 guys who were all pretty good sprinters.
Yeah, no, it was very nervous, and even before that, the 20 guys that we were with, we were, there was all sprinters.
Seems like your win today's made a lot of people happy.
Yeah, I have a lot of people that I'm friends with a lot of people here, and I just want to thank everybody who's always believed in me and told me that I could win. I finally got it, a big one. So
you got a big one, and this weekend coming up is Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, that's the real big goal of the season. So I just need to keep it together and do the same thing on Sunday.
Well done, George, the first American to win the event. He gets it over Leon Van Bon, Stefan Westerman, Arvis Piziks and Nico Matan. And Nico Eekhout slipped away from the chase group. He came home in 6th place. But there's no doubt about who all the cheers are for here. It's for an American in Belgium. And the team now all smiles as they arrive a little bit behind, but knowing their job was well spent out on the highways, they got the right man in the break today. George Hincapie getting clear in a group with 2 laps to go of the Kemmel, and as he said, he did everything right, and at the end the photo in his favour.
Antonio, big change for you now riding for the big US Postal Service team, but what a great win today for Georgie Hincapie.
Yeah, I mean, George has wanted this for a while, a big win, and he's got the power, definitely. We could see it all week. Just needed to show some aggression out there, and when he realized that he had so many sprinters in the group, he knew it was time to attack and make them suffer, and he did it, and he won.
It's a big change as well, I think, for US Postal. Everybody knows they can do it in the major stage races, but now it seems as if US Postal is a classics team as well.
Yeah, we're trying to fill all those voids, and I think we're doing a good job, especially, with guys like George and Christian leading the way in these type of events. Thanks.
Antonio Cruz himself finishing in 30th place. A great ride for him in his first Ghent Wevelgem. And this is a smiling Matt White.
Well, matey, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Winning the bike race.
Yeah, we finally pulled it off. No, George has been the most consistent guy the last week or two here in Belgium, and finally, I think he realised on Sunday that he could match it with anyone here, and he rode aggressive, and he's pulled it off today. It's a great ride.
He was riding very sensibly too, because whenever the splits happened, he rode across to them. In the past years, he may well have sat back.
Yeah, he's finally realised that he could do it, and we're really motivated as a team, and I'm so happy for George. He's deserved this one, so hopefully we can do it again on Sunday. He's the man for the job.
He looked very relaxed, very good pedalling action on all of the climbs today. You think he's got a chance Sunday?
Yeah, definitely. I'd put him in the top 3 favourites for Sunday for sure. We'll be riding for him, that's for sure.
A good job by Matty White today.
Thank you.
And so this is the sprint finish. Arvis Piziks opened up the action, then he was wiped out by Stefan Westerman, and Westerman now having to chase through on 2 other riders that beat them both in the tight sprint finish. There's confirmation of the result. George Hincapie at 42 seconds. Nico Eekhout came home in 6th place, and Chris Pearce, also in the action today, took 7th. But on the podium tonight, an American high on the top spot. George Hincapie finally gets the win in Ghent Wevelgem, a win he has promised us for a couple of years now. He outsprinted Van Bon and Stefan Wesserman. So all smiles, Georgie Hincapie, as he now prepares to step off the podium. And as he said, he has a lot of friends here. Here's another one with the flag of the United States in the High Street here in Wevelgem, and a man who has known George a while.
Big fan of George? Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
How long have you known him?
Since he was 12, racing in Central Park, and you know, right through the ranks, we all knew he was going big places. So this is long overdue win. We're all happy for him. I'm sure everybody back in the States is going nuts when they see this, when they read about it. So it's awesome.
It's great to watch it on the videos, but actually to come here and see it live is something pretty special.
I don't know how many videos I know by heart, and from training and just studying the races, and to see Georgie win, it's amazing. It's leaves me speechless.
Did you think he could win today? Because there were some pretty strong guys in there with him.
Yeah, I knew, you know, he's always there. He's always one of the winners, you know. Walking past the bookies, I wanted to put money on him. I was just happy to be, you know, part of this whole atmosphere. But to see, you know, he's definitely overdue. He's going to win Sunday. I know it as well. Maybe Amstel.
You're going to be there for Paris-Roubaix to see him?
Yeah, you'll see this flag waving, and I'll be doing the rally to every point I can get to. You know, did Flanders, so it's the whole week.
You're going to buy this video?
Oh, of course. Are you kidding me?
Great. We'll arrange a discount because now you're part of it. You can go all the way back to June 1999. That was the last time George Hincapie won a bike race, and that was in Trenton, New Jersey in the United States. Now he can really claim to be one of the great bike riders. He's put his name on a classic trophy, and make no mistake about it, Ghent Wevelgem is a classic race. George Hincapie is no longer the man who almost made it. He's now there big time. This tape is one for the archives. Enjoy it. Goodbye.